Welcome to the Empowered Podcast, episode number 69. Today is Wednesday, January the 28th. And the only reason why that's important is because it's 2 days before my wedding anniversary. So here in 2015, we're 2 days shy of Ashley and I being married for 5 wonderful years. We've got a little vacation planned, and we're pretty excited about that. But that's not what the episode is about today. Today's episode number 69, is with Lou Mongello, who, by the way, has just been announced as one of the keynote speakers for Podcast Movement 2015. His podcast, and I think we talk about this in the episode a little bit more in detail, but his podcast, ever since he started doing episodes, he has been voted the number one travel podcast every single year. Like 8 years in a row. It's absolutely amazing. So in today's episode, Lou and I, we're going to talk about his journey from, that kind of rhymes, his journey from attorney to being a Disney park expert. How he has built his business, his reputation, his brand, about creating meetups around the Disney brand. He's not affiliated with Disney, or is he? You'll have to listen to find out. We're going to learn about the purpose of the meetups and how Lou really gets the most impact for the people who show up and attend, and how he's just really living his dreams. And something that's fairly interesting to me, and I don't know, I don't have any plans for it, but I would love to see a kind of Ellery Wells Empowered Podcast meetup group that goes on a cruise, and Lou and I talk about that later in the future. I think that would be kind of fun. And as the bonus for this episode, of course, this is part 2 in a series of live events. If you go to empoweredpodcast.com/69, empoweredpodcast.com/69, you will be able to download Lou's awesome tips for creating a successful event, like how to promote it, how to get different avenues for generating buzz around your event to get people excited to come and hear about what you have to say, what you have to talk about, and getting to meet one another. And then how, lastly, and this is something, if you're wanting to do business online and do the things that Lou and I are doing, Lou gives us a tip on how you can turn relationships into revenue. So go to empoweredpodcast.com/69, download Lou's tips for creating a successful event. And if you like that, go back and listen to episode 68. There's another download where I share some tips that Laura Elgaita gave us, and you can download both of those if you go to empoweredpodcast.com. Episodes 68 and 69. We'll go right into the episode. Thank you for tuning into the Empowered Podcast. Today I'm your host, Ellery Wells, and this episode is part of a series all about local, live, in-person meetups to help you just connect with other people, build your brand, build some authority, and I have one of the experts to teach us how to do that today. But before we go right into how he's an expert on meetups, I just want to tell you about this guy. He has the most successful travel podcast in the history of podcasting. I think he's won the best travel show like 8 years in a row. He's an expert on Disney. He's been featured on Fox, USA Today, Bloomberg, all the big news networks. He was, I believe, an attorney, and he left that practice of law to go to Florida to become this Disney expert. Welcome to the show with me, Lou Mongello. How you doing, Lou?
Hey, Ellery. Thanks so much for having me.
You are very welcome. I'm excited to have you. Just so everybody who is listening knows, I want to start local meetups, and I'm starting one here in the North Austin area. And I put out a request: if you have experience, please help me, because I don't know what I'm doing. And Lou, you responded, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And you're like, I've got like millions of people that come and hang out with me in these meetups. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to learn from the experts. So again, thank you Thanks for spending an hour or so with us today.
No, man, I look forward to it. It's doing the meetups and the in-person stuff is a really important part, if not the most important part of what I do. So I'm happy to chat about it.
Well, before we go any further, I have to ask you maybe it's a weird question, and hopefully you know the answer. You ready?
I'm a little frightened, but I'm ready.
In The Sword in the Stone, what does Merlin call the greatest force on Earth?
Oh, my God. I figured you're going to ask me a question about an animated film today. The greatest force on Earth. Sushi? I don't I've updated it for modern times. I don't know.
He says love is the greatest force. Oh, that's sweet.
Oh.
No, I pulled up Disney trivia, and I was like, man, I could go down this list, and I want to see how many Lou knows.
So I will qualify it and say I'm really more of a theme park guy. So sort of Walt Disney World is my home, and that is how I got started down this very circuitous path from lawyer in New Jersey to talking about Disney full time.
Wow. As a side note to that, there was this like infographic thing on, I don't know, some website a year ago. And there was this, and it showed how people talk in all over the country, different cultures, if they say soda or pop or highway or freeway, those kinds of things. And it's all color coded. And New Jersey was like this bright pink color. And then and the rest of the world was something else. And nobody said anything like New Jersey. But down in this little part of Florida, another bright spot of pink. And I think you're one of those many, many transports from Jersey down to Florida, just like they teach us in The Sopranos.
Yeah, exactly. Because nobody's actually born in Florida. Like everybody migrates here from somewhere in the Northeast when they just get tired of shoveling snow.
That's probably true. I spent a week in Miami in oh gosh, that was July. It was so humid, man.
Yeah.
It was miserable. I'm from Texas, but our humidity is not quite the same. It was a great week, but it was absolutely miserable. And that actually brings me to how I got this idea of starting these meetups. I was invited to speak at the meetup that Jared Easley and Laura Elgaita host. It's about an hour north of Miami, and it was an absolutely fantastic experience. And I want to bring that same thing here to North Austin. And again, that's how you and I really connected and got aligned to do this. And again, that's what we want to talk about. But the Disney part and the journey, how you got there, is absolutely critical and important to me. Because how many people go from attorney to Disney expert? Anybody other than you?
I think a lot of people go from attorney to something, but not necessarily the route to Disney.
So how did that happen? Did you just love the movies, the theme park? What was the process there?
Yeah, so a real sort of short version of the story, I was always in love with Disney. My parents took me in November of 71, like 3 weeks after Walt Disney World opened in Florida. And we went back every year. Like we were the Griswold family. We got in the truckster and we drove down to Florida and went to Disney, and I became fascinated by the place. Went year after year, even without my family. I'd go with friends. I'd go with my girlfriend, whatever it may be. And so fast forward to 2003. I'm a lawyer. I have an IT consulting company on the side. So I'm in a service business, and I had this crazy idea of making something once, and all I really knew about was kind of Walt Disney World. So I really wrote the book I wanted to read, and the challenge was, can I write the book and can I get it published? So I wrote a Walt Disney World trivia book thinking that was it. And when I saw it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and so made my mom cry because she was so proud, that was the end of the game. And the little book turned into a little 2-page brochure website, which turned into articles, which turned into a discussion forum. And it kind of snowballed. I saw podcasting coming down the pike in 2005. People were like, wait a minute, man. Like, you're going to sit in your room by yourself, talking into a mic about Mickey Mouse for an hour a week and hope that people listen. And I was like, yeah, that's so cool. They're like, you're a freak. I give you 6 weeks. So it did sort of snowball into this accidental business. And I was going back and forth from New Jersey to Florida. At one point, I just said, you know what? If I'm going to do this, and I think I can make this a business, I need to go all in. And I sold everything I had. I brought money to my closing and packed up the Honda Odyssey and drove to Florida. And I've been doing it full time since about 2007.
Wow. Have the podcast awards for 2014 been announced yet, or is that later this year?
They actually moved it. So NMX just bought the podcast awards from Todd Cochran, and the show is now moved from January to April. It's going to be connected with NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters. So now it's going to be
it's going
to be later.
They're going to announce that at the next New Media Expo thing.
Yeah, so I think what happens is normally the nomination period begins around this time, October, November, and then they announce it, I think they started announcing it at the podcast awards over the last few, at New Media Expo over the last few years. So, yeah.
Well, the only reason why I looked that up, because I see you've been voted the best travel podcast in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, but not 2014, but we haven't even voted yet, so I can't hold that against you. So that's the only reason why I mentioned that even at all. So what did your friends and family say when you packed up this Honda Odyssey and said, I'm going to go talk about or feature about Walt Disney World, or had you kind of already proven that there's something there with the book?
Well, I mean, I had written the book, and I had actually, I had written a second book, and was making a little bit of money through like affiliate things and stuff like that. And then I started getting sponsorships. But when they said, look, at the time I had left the practice of law because I had my IT business took off, and I was actually the chief technology officer for a medical imaging company. So I had a very comfortable job. I was making a great salary, and they're like, you're going to quit and leave all that behind in hopes that this podcast, whatever that is, thing takes off? And I said, yeah. I said, I need to sort of really believe in what I'm doing. And fortunately, I had a good support system of family behind me, but a lot of friends and certainly coworkers thought I was absolutely insane.
Yeah, I mean,
and I might have been insane.
but it's obviously paying off. I mean, you've been on. I just see screenshots on your site. Which would you suggest people go to the Mongello.com, or is there another site that's better for them?
So all the Disney stuff I do is over at wdwradio.com, and then sort of my personal site and some of the other things I've been doing as a result of the Disney stuff. All these secondary and tertiary businesses are over at LouMongello.com. Yeah.
So you do private tours, you've got the trivia books, even the audio guides. Someone suggested a podcast about historical tours where it's either an episodic podcast, but kind of like these audio tours that you're doing, if you're standing here under the Eiffel Tower, and then they give you history and all that kind of stuff. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah, and the thing that I do too is I record them with sort of binaural ambient sounds of the park behind me. So even if you're listening at home, you really get the sense as though you are, if you close your eyes, you get the sense that you are walking alongside me in the parks, and you can hear the train whistle, and you can hear the horse-drawn trolley and kids laughing, and it really sort of helps to connect you to the experience.
Where'd you get these ideas? Did someone say, hey, Lou, you should try this? Or was it like, oh man, maybe I should try this, and you came up with it on your own?
What was happening was as I would go down to the parks and I'd be with friends or be with family, we'd be walking through, and I found myself sort of accidentally touring them through. And episodes of my show were some of those similar kind of things where I would talk about a specific attraction, and I'd realize that people love that ambient sound. So I said, look, I obviously can't scale myself big enough that I can give everybody a tour, but what I can do is provide it in this manner. So you feel as though you are sort of a virtual walking tour. And I do it land by land in the Magic Kingdom, and eventually I hit the rest of the parks as well.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. And it all started because of a love for the theme park.
Absolutely. That we throw the word passion around a lot, but I am very, very passionate, and I love, I not like, a crazy person, but I really enjoy Disney, and I love the experience at the parks.
That's awesome, because I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday, or it was just in the last couple of days, and we have ideas. You had this idea to start a book, and then it talked into a 2-page pamphlet, and then it turned into a small website, and then it just, like you said, mushroomed or snowballed into something huge. And the more we free ourselves to flex our creative muscles and give ourselves permission to take these risks, we can do crazy things. Like, I mean, just looking at your site with the Disney stuff, the consulting and the coaching and the podcast, and just one idea is now something pretty crazy.
And you never can sort of see where it's going to lead to. I definitely believe in taking the calculated leaps of faith, because my feeling already was I didn't want to not do it, and then 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road go, God, like, why didn't I give that a shot? Like, who knows what would have happened? Certainly never thinking this is where I would be when I did it, but I realized that I did need to take that leap because I did not want to have the regrets later on. And I see too often people who are unhappy at their jobs, and I'm sure you do as well, and they can't wait to go home and work on their hobby or do this thing on the nights or weekends. And I think now, especially in 2014, we are empowered, to use your words, with the tools and opportunity to take those things that we love and potentially make it into a business or possibly even your profession.
Yeah, absolutely. Or what's worse, Lou, if in 15, 20 years, maybe WW or WDW radio and the podcast, they don't exist. That would be bad. But what if somebody else had done that instead of you?
Right.
I think that would even feel worse. So now, again, to the reason why I want you to share this part of your knowledge with us, what brought on the local meetups? Where did you get the idea? How did it start? How did you set up your first one? Take it from there.
So I will qualify my answer by admitting I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I didn't even know what a quote unquote meetup was. Like, this is going back to probably 2006 or 7. So what
we didn't even call them meetups.
I know. I don't know what I called it. I called it something. I was in New Jersey, and a number of Disney websites had gotten together, and we had sort of this annual little gathering once a year over a couple of days in December, which lasted, 3 or 4 years. It was great. A lot of people came together to just sort of go to the parks and have, events and tours and scavenger hunts and things like that. And we sort of rented a ballroom. But I was finding that readers and listeners were emailing saying, oh, man, I can't get down there in December. I'm a teacher. My kids are in school, whatever it may be. I would love to be able to, say hi one of these times. And I was flying back and forth from Orlando to New Jersey pretty often, possibly, 2 or 3 times a month. And people would email me and say, hey, I'd love to get together and say hi. And I'll never forget the first night that I did it. I landed in Orlando. I called my wife. And I said, listen, I just got here. I'm going to downtown Disney to meet up with this guy. His name is Glenn. He's from Tennessee. So if you don't hear from me by midnight, call the police and give them that information, because that's all I really knew about him. And we met up and we chatted and we had dinner and actually ended up becoming, really, really good friends. But as I was doing this, I said, well, look, I'm going back and forth all the time. I'm in Walt Disney World. I'm just going to say, look, on January 8th, over marathon weekend, which is a pretty busy weekend, I had a running team and things like that because I raised money for Make-A-Wish. I said, look, I'm going to be in the parks anyway. Let's just meet in Tomorrowland by this restaurant at 1:00. And again, the friends who didn't understand and still don't understand what I'm doing, they're like, wait a minute, man, time out. Like, you're going to fly down to Disney World, tell people where you are, hope that they show up and just talk about Mickey Mouse. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. They're like, you'll be dead in 6 weeks. And so that first thing, I had no idea what to expect. And I'm like, it's going to be me and like one crazy guy just, standing here. And like 150 people showed up.
Holy
and I was
cow.
like, this is fascinating to me. And the idea, Ellery, to be clear, was it's not for them to come and meet me. Right? Because as a podcaster, the people that listen to you and read your stuff, they feel like they know you, right? They know you well because they listen to you, they enjoy you. But I wanted to have the opportunity to meet them. I didn't like the fact that I was always pushing out content. I wanted the feedback. I wanted to see people. I wanted to hear their stories. I wanted to thank them for letting me do what I did, never understanding that it would turn into something that would be really kind of the most important part of what I do, because I'm very much a handshake and a hug kind of guy. I think we lose sight of that because we're always worried about connecting and following and liking and sharing and everything else online, and we forget about meeting people face to face. So long story longer, since that first meetup in January 2008, I've done a monthly meetup every single month in Walt Disney World and some of the other Disney parks and Disney cruise lines and things like that. So I guess it's going on almost 7 years now.
Wow. Wow, so you actually go in, it's not even outside the park. People have to buy tickets. I mean, they go to the park and do the rides and stuff too, but they buy a ticket and go find you inside.
Yeah, and I'll do it different places. So I'll do it sort of outside of the parks, like in downtown Disney or at a resort. So if you don't have a park ticket, I want it to be as accessible as possible. So like there's a Starbucks or something in downtown Disney, or there's a restaurant in downtown Disney where you don't need a ticket to get into, because I do want to try and make it as accessible to as many people as possible. And I don't obviously charge for it. They're completely free. I get nothing out of it other than the enjoyment of getting to meet people and get a chance to talk to them face to face.
Yeah, and this will air after my meetup, so hopefully it will be a success. But I'm definitely like you. I've got 2 speakers lined up for my meetup. It's November 1st, and I'm not one of them. I didn't want it to be the Ellery show, and I think because my audience is not huge. I mean, I guess there's a few thousand people in it, but not very many local. I didn't want it to be the Ellery show, and if I said, "Hey, I'm going to become speaking, come see me," I would have felt like that was really, I don't know if narcissistic's the right word, but self-centered, and I would doubt anybody would show up. But if you phrase, and I didn't want it to be a manipulative thing, but I wanted to really connect people in the community who are sitting alone in a room, on nights and weekends or all day like me. You go crazy if you don't have this human connection. And I loved what happened in Florida, and I got a chance to see the same thing up in Dallas that Gary Leland puts on, and I agree with you, Lou. It's connecting people with other people who are passionate about the same topic. So
it is about not just us getting to meet the people that come, but it's allowing those like-minded people to come together. And especially in terms of what you're doing, we know as a solopreneur what a potentially lonely existence it can be sometimes. So connecting people and letting them network in that kind of very sort of casual, comfortable environment is very helpful. But by the same token, Ellery, they do want to come there and meet you, right? Because they do listen. They appreciate you. They like what you do. And they want to come to see, believe it or not, they want to come to see you and thank you and talk to you and get 5 minutes with you to ask you a question and say, "Hey, Ellery, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm struggling with. What do you think?" And to get that one-on-one time with you that's not in an email or not in a tweet, I think is very, very valuable to the people that enjoy what you're doing.
I hope so. And to be perfectly honest, I would be lying if I didn't hope to get some authority, maybe some coaching clients or something out of it. But I think when you are the connector of people, you are automatically seen as maybe experts, a little bit strong, but being in the know or knowledgeable or being able to do something that other people weren't able to do. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think you are an expert. And not to get on a conversation about podcasting, but I think that's what podcasting allows us to do is, podcasting is sort of the new book. It's the new TV show. It's the new radio show. You are, by virtue of what you're doing, and obviously you've been doing it for a long time, you are an expert in terms of online entrepreneurship. So you should really, embrace that. It's not being, I think, egotistical to say that.
Good. So tell us about the involvement of Disney. I keep derailing everybody with more questions.
Right.
But so what have you gotten any feedback from them?
Yeah, so to be clear, I don't work for Disney. Everything that I do is completely independent, and I'm not paid by Disney. I'm not sponsored by them. I pay full price for my tickets and food and
really?
Yeah. So,
they don't even hook you up with a discount.
Nope, no discounts. I pay full price for everything. And I do a very positive show about Disney, not because I get anything, but because I simply love the place. I love the product. I love talking about the things that make us happy about going there. So over the years, I've built up a good relationship with Disney. When I first started, Ellery, it was tough because back in 2003, when I was writing my book and all I wanted was access to information, they're like, "Look, you're not media. Media is newspapers, TV, and radio, and that's it."
Did you have a blog then, or was it just the book?
In 2004, I started, we called it articles back then. But, Disney was like, "Whoa, if you're not one of the big three, we don't want to know you." And they were not in a rude kind of way, but that's just the old guard. They just figured that the internet was still very much the Wild West. There was no control, and it certainly was not serious and a business. So I had to build up a level of trust and credibility with them, which I take very, very seriously because I did.
So like ABC, CBS, NBC, those are the big three? That what you're talking about?
The big three were newspapers, radio, and TV. That's all they. Okay. Yeah, that's all they wanted to know. So when I got my first invitation to a media event, and I was able to stand alongside the ABC, CBS, and NBC, I was like, "Wow, that's incredibly validating for me." And that's I respect that privilege very, very highly. So they do invite me to media events. They do give me some freedom and flexibility, do recordings and do videos and cover the brand, because I think they also realize that we as third-party content providers for something that Disney and the big brands cannot do themselves, right? The message that we put is very, very different. If Disney says, go eat at Pecos Bill's, it's the best hamburger in the world, it's a marketing message. If I go out with my recorder and I do a live restaurant review and I'm like, oh my God, it's the best hamburger ever, it carries a very different weight, right? That endorsement from a trusted source like you is very different than something that the brand itself puts out. So I think they've really come to embrace what the online community does.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to what the internet was like in 2003. We didn't have smartphones. There's no internet on your phone. And if you're too young listening to this, you're going to be like, what is that? What does that mean?
A Usenet news group. What is that? What's a bulletin board system?
Is it a forum? Is that like a Facebook chat?
I had a BBS. I ran bulletin boards out of my home with, a dial-up phone line and programming my Hayes 300 baud modem. I know I'm really, really old when I say that. But the direct answer to your question is, so Disney really has no involvement in my meetups. They know that I do them. They're certainly, I'm very upfront about, I'm trying to hide anything. And it helps bring people to the park too. We do stuff together and we eat and we go do attractions or wander the parks or whatever it may be.
So the first one, you put a message out. You were talking to this guy from Tennessee, and you were going to go meet at 1:00 at this restaurant. Where did it sounds a little bit weird when you say that, but some of my, and you may agree, Lou, some of my best friends now, since I don't go into an office every day, some of my best friends now are the ones that I met online.
Absolutely.
And it's not I think a lot of people still have this weird stigma of like AOL chat rooms, and it's weird and it's creepy, but we've got Match.com that, well, according to them, like 1 in 5 relationships starts there. And, we're talking, a 3 days drive apart across the internet. But when you meet guests from your show, it's like, hey, we're all buddies. And it's just not the same as it was even just a few years ago. So I'm with you. But you're messaging this guy in Tennessee. Where else did you advertise that you guys were gonna to get together? So
he had sort of just emailed me because he was watching my live broadcast and he was just liking what I did. And he says, hey, I just moved here. Now it's going to sound really creepy. He's like, I just moved here. I'm really lonely. I don't really know anybody. Do you want to meet up? I'm like, this guy wants to wear my skin. I was a little creeped out, but you're right.
I'll be the one in the van with no windows.
What does this rag smell like? But you're right. We became actually great friends. And I think to your point, that's what happens, because when you meet people online, as opposed to going and meeting them at a bar or at, some random location, you automatically have this thing. You've got this common thread, whether it's a love of entrepreneurship or Disney or the New York Giants or whatever it might be. That's the thing, right? That's your commonality. And that's one of the things that, and you're right. The people who are my best friends now, I met directly because of what I do in sort of the Disney space.
Yeah. When you go to an office, your bond is the cubicles or the company or the boss or the hatred of the boss in the company. And this is a kind of a bad analogy. I don't want to equate being an online entrepreneur to war, but we're going through this together, where even though we're 1,000 miles away, we're trying to build something bigger and greater than ourselves. And that is what ties us together. And that doesn't really go away. where a boss can go away, a job can go away, which I can attest to. Even your physical locations, if you've ever had friends where you don't talk to anymore when you left Jersey, those things can go away. But the people that we meet with online, our passion runs through everything that we do, and it doesn't really know all these boundaries of location or concrete and steel offices. So that's kind of cool. And you still connect with this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you do something and I do it as well, too. And that's the value of, like, for example, like your mastermind group, right? Like it allows people to come together, and because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. When you're an entrepreneur, there is no road and there's no start and finish line. Like, it is an ongoing journey. We are figuring this out as we go along. And we're oftentimes not just steering the ship. We're like the only guy on it. So coming together with like-minded people who can help each other, I think is incredibly valuable.
Exactly. So how did the second one go? You kind of given us an idea of the first one. Meetup.com probably wasn't available then. Eventbrite wasn't available then. All you had were forums and email and what did you just call them? Not newsletters, but
I didn't even have a newsletter. I didn't even have that.
So how did you build awareness of this and convince people to come and get together?
So I did have a very active and engaged discussion forum. I've been running a V-Bullet, and I still do. I run a V-Bulletin discussion forum since early 2004. And that's what, that was our hub. That was our clubhouse, because there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter. And that's where I put it out. And then those people who might be active on other discussion forums might say, hey, I'm going to Disney World in October, and this guy Mongello who wrote the trivia book is having a meetup. Why don't you guys come? So it was very organic. It was very natural. Okay. I never did any paid advertising, and it really became word of mouth. And people came down, and you never know. 1 month you might get 40 people. 1 month you might get 200 people. It still fascinates me, and it's incredibly humbling that somebody who is paying such a great deal of money to go down to Walt Disney World will take time out of their vacation or with their family or even away from their family just to come over and say hello. Like there's nothing more rewarding than that. And I think that speaks volumes to those people and that community that they have created. These people that like to get together in person. And from it, I've seen incredible friendships form. 3 marriages have come out of meetups that I've done.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's an amazing, amazing thing.
So are you at every month?
Absolutely, yep.
And of course you live pretty close to the park, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so I can see the fireworks from my house and hear the train whistle in the
cool.
Magic Kingdom. Yeah, so I'm a nerd, I know.
Is Disney its own town with a zip code now, or is it? Because you had said it outside the park, and I'm thinking like Six Flags is here outside the park. You've got a few restaurants, but that's about it. But you were saying
it's always on Disney property. Yeah, so it's always on Disney property somewhere. They are sort of their own little quasi-government town in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. But they've got 20 hotels and a downtown Disney area and a boardwalk area that's on Disney property, but you don't need a ticket to get into. There's a shopping and dining districts and things like that. So I'll always do it on Disney property. And forgive me if I'm jumping ahead of the game, but I've also found too that as I have gone and traveled either to Disneyland or even as I go speaking at other places too, I'd say, oh, listen, you know what? I'm going to be in Dallas, Texas at Podcast Movement. Anyone wants to get together and meet up, let's meet up at the Grand Lux Cafe. And I walk downstairs and there's 70 people getting together for dinner, which is amazing. And again, I keep using the word humbling because it is. I'm like, God, these people are like driving hours, literally hours to come out just to get together with other people. I did one in Atlanta. I was doing a news segment in Atlanta, and some guy drove 7 hours, like in the rain and the sleet, and I'm like, please tell me you're going to a museum or something. And he's like, no, I'm just coming because I wanted to meet you and meet other people. And because where he was, he didn't have any friends that sort of that same interest.
For the last couple of months, I've been saying to a lot of people, it's a tragedy how we downplay the power of our own story and just how powerful it is. But I'm thinking just because of what you're talking about, maybe I should change that to the power of connecting with other people. And just I've been to Disney World maybe once, and it was, I don't know, 18 years ago or something. So I don't have that same connection. I don't know if I would drive 2 or 3 hours, but that's more about me, not about you, Lou. But I drove 3 or 4 hours to go to Podcast Movement. Well, for that matter, I drove 4 hours to go see James Kinson talk at the podcast thing in Dallas. So I have done the same thing, and it's all about creating that connection and that bond between other people. And it's what I was going to say a second ago is when you're putting it all on Disney property. It's not like up in Irving here in Texas. I'm going to go to the Steak and Ale across the street. It's all Disney stuff. So these are all. It's kind of happening organically. People are word of mouth, and people don't say good things about events and people unless there's really cool stuff or really good value or they had a great time. How did you make sure people had a great time while they were there?
So I really don't go in, I don't have like activities planned and games and handouts or anything like that. It's because people say, well, like, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't know. We just sort of stand there and we sort of, talk, and I talk to them and they get to talk to each other. Obviously, we're sometimes in a park, but sometimes we're, what I found that surprised me, Ellery, was that when I did do stuff on the road, I realized that people weren't coming there because it was in Walt Disney World. They were coming there for the connections and the relationships and the people. And I bet you, and I want to hear after your event, I'll bet you somebody's going to come to your Austin meetup and say, Ellery, I drove X amount of hours because I wanted to meet you, or because I'm an entrepreneur and I don't know anybody else that's a solopreneur and I wanted to meet them as well. Because that's what I find for the Disney meetups and stuff that I do. It doesn't matter where I go. People are coming not to the place, but for the people.
I would love to have a story like that. To me, at this point, Lou, it's almost like, yeah, that'd be cool, but yeah, I don't see it happening. Just maybe that's the self-doubt. I don't know. Because you kind of you've kind of, I don't know if this is the right term, but you have kind of adopted an audience. You've done something with it, but you've kind of said, hey, let's share our passion about a topic that's not me. Would you agree?
Yeah, obviously the commonality is this, everybody has this love of the Disney brand.
Yeah. Speaking of which, my father-in-law is looking at doing a Disney vacation in like Ireland. It's all handled by Disney, and I didn't know they did that stuff. But it's just the level of quality that Disney, I guess, is providing, and not really a guarantee, but you assume that it's going to be an amazing event because of Disney. So just kind of a side note there that Disney does all kinds of cool stuff. And cruises, like you mentioned. Have you ever gone on a cruise? Have you ever done one of the meetups on a cruise?
Yeah, so actually, and forgive me again if I'm jumping ahead, but what I started to do was, and here's sort of the ROI, right? Because I think you or maybe someone who's listening is saying, well, this is great, and you're going at, but people say to me, Lou, you're spending like a day a month, like, usually on a weekend that you could be with your family, to go out and meet these strangers. Like, why do you do it? And again, it is kind of about the warm and fuzzies, but there is a potential ROI, because when you do these types of free meetups and the community forums and they love what you do, they want to come back and they want to do more. So when you want to start doing paid events, right, the community is already there. They're already built in. So for the past 5 or 6 years, in addition to some paid events I do at Walt Disney World, I host a cruise on the Disney Cruise Line.
Sweet.
And again, the first time I did it, I was like, you know what? Nobody's going to show up. There's going to be like 10 people, which was fine. Like, I didn't care. I will tell you that the cruise is not about making money, and oftentimes it's not a money-making venture for me, because we do a lot of value add for what people do in terms of meetups or bringing on special guests. But cruising has been more fun when you're walking around and you see somebody who's got the yellow alert and the credential on. You know that you've got something in common. You listen to the show, you're part of the community, whatever it may be. We do stuff, we do events, special events and stuff together. And it fascinates me. It fascinates me that 500 strangers can come together on the ship and spend, 4 days or a week on a cruise.
Wow. That's insane. We went on our first cruise this year. We went to Bahamas, Jamaica, and Grand Cayman, and I think our boat had about 4,000 people, and it was a very interesting type of trip. And you're telling me you get 500 people to book a cruise at the same time on the same boat and get together and chat with other people.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing to see. And when you get all those people together, like on the beach for a group picture with the Disney ship in the background, like it's an amazing feeling. And it has, Ellery, I really, that has nothing to do with me. That has to do with them and the community that they create. And I watch these friendships and these relationships form, and year after year, and then they start coming back together as a group, and they all want to be on the same deck, or they want to have cabins that are near each other because of the friendships that they formed, on the cruise the year before. So like next year, we go to like, the Caribbean and the Bahamas. Like next year we're going to Alaska, which is the farthest you can get from a Disney park, but it's on a Disney cruise ship.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So you've been doing this. They grew organically. People used to use message boards. They may still do that. But let's fast forward to 2014, or maybe over the next 6-8 months. We don't know necessarily what technology is going to be coming out. If you were in my position and you have a smaller audience, like people maybe who are listening to this, they have small audiences too, maybe some big ones, and they are looking to create. They're looking to duplicate what you've done around a specific topic. Maybe it's cash cars, or maybe it's about online entrepreneurship. Maybe it's about podcasting. What are some tips, maybe 2 or 3, or however many you think you can pack in? What are some of the ways that people like me should go about to create a successful event, get the word out, make sure people have fun and enjoy, and come back to the second one?
It's MySpace. Ellery, MySpace is coming back. That's going to be the platform you need to leverage.
You and Justin Timberlake, all about the MySpace.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk on this for a long time, and I don't want to, monopolize too much of the time. But this was actually what I spoke about at Podcast Movement, was this idea of taking these online relationships offline and then bringing them back online again. Obviously having a destination on your site, so having like an event page where people can go to always see what is coming up, and also see what they may have missed in the past in terms of photos from past events, videos, discussions that are going on, to say, hey, wow, looks like these people had a great time last time. Next time that he's doing it, I want to make sure I go out to Austin and meet up with Ellery because it looks like I missed something really cool. Facebook is obviously another platform you need to leverage too, in terms of having your group or having your fan page, creating an event there. It's gotten a little bit wonkier because obviously with the Facebook algorithm, who actually gets to see it and who you can invite. Like you can only invite like 1,500 of your friends. You can't invite all your friends anymore, even though they want to be your friend.
And more than 1,500 join, or is that the invite?
That's the invite max. So okay. Yeah, it's just sort of wonky how you can do it.
Okay.
But the idea is to, beforehand really get the buzz going as much as you can in as many different channels as possible. So obviously put it out on your podcast, put it out on social, put it on your site, put it on Facebook, create like a teaser video and put that up on YouTube, because you never know where people might actually be able to find you, and encourage the people that are coming to bring a friend. Like tell them, say, hey, help me get the word out. Bring a friend. It's open to everybody. The more the merrier. Help sort of foster and create this community. During events, obviously you not just want to encourage the people who are there to share it and hashtag it and things like that. But if you can, obviously have somebody there taking pictures, shoot a video while you're there too. So afterwards you can post a recap video on your site and on YouTube. Something else I do too is I live broadcast a number of my events too. The idea is not like, no, look what you're missing. But hey, I want you to be part, even though you can't get here, I want you to be part of it. You can watch live, you can chat in the chat room, you can be part of the event. And then next time when there is something going on, hopefully you'll be encouraged to come and be part of it. Because
how do you do the live broadcast?
I use Ustream primarily.
Ustream, okay.
Only because it has the built-in chat functionality. So people can watch and chat right from their phones or their iPads, and I find that a lot of my audience actually does that.
Is that free, or is there a paid version you have to do for Ustream?
Yes and yes. There is a free version that will they'll do some mid-roll ads throughout, but there's also a paid version that gives you X amount of ad-free hours per month. But because I do a live show every week, I blew through my hours very quickly. So,
when you mentioned podcast movement, your session was using offline interactions to increase online engagement. And I had thought about going to that one, but I had to go to my friend Marshall Stevenson's, even though I'm not a sports person, he was talking about sports and podcasting, and I went to his, so I apologize for missing yours.
This conversation's over. I'm done.
That's the second time I've gotten that in a couple months. I told somebody I was an Android fan, and like, yep, we're done.
No, listen, but that's the beauty of something like Podcast Movement, is that there's so many good sessions going on all at the same time. It's hard, man. You can't go to every single one of them. So.
Exactly. That'll be my excuse for it. But I'm gonna have to go back and watch it, because that's so directly relevant to what we're talking about. So Facebook groups, I need a website, and I put something together. I'm somewhat web savvy now. I've built a handful or two of websites and tweaked the crap out of my own. And I built Online Entrepreneurs NA, like for North Austin. I don't know if it's going to be the URL I go with permanently, but onlineentrepreneurssna.com. And I like what you are saying. So having an events page, upcoming, past, so people can see pictures and videos and see all of the fun that they missed out on or were part of, and when the next one will be, plus Facebook groups. I'm kind of running through everything on my head, and it works as an excellent recap. Facebook groups, by the way, and you probably know this by now, Lou, is when you're in a group, those conversations are more likely to be seen in your news feed or the news feed of your audience than likes or shares by a page.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is really important if you're trying to market online, and I mean, kind of critical if you're trying to build a community online. And I've said for a long time, the most successful people do what you're doing, Lou, and they're creating communities. It's not just, hey, join the Ellery fan page, join Ellery's community. And people want to be part of a community. They don't want to be fans. I mean, rock stars have fans and groupies.
Yeah, I hate the word fans.
I don't like it either. And it's kind of weird.
And you're right. And you hit on it, right? It's being part of. People want to belong. They want to feel as they are part of something. They're part of a group. They're part of a community, whatever it may be. And that's what a Facebook group does. And that's what these kind of meetups do too. And look, you can have a meet for no reason at all. Look, you can also do things like, if you have a new product coming out, you can do it like a launch party. You can do like exclusive events like tours or something like a simple picnic. You can put a team together. Like we have a running team that raises money for Make-A-Wish. You could have workshops like you have. You can have speakers. There's tons of different ways to do the events, and then use things like Facebook and Eventbrite and Meetup and Plancast, and put an image up on Pinterest, put an image up on Instagram, because you never know where somebody's going to find you.
Oh, I like that. Those are two things that I haven't done. I have a seldom active Pinterest account, and I just joined Instagram about a month ago, so that's a good idea too. Interesting. So how would you suggest, if someone fast forward 6 months to a year, they've been doing meetups on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, and they think, hey, maybe I can either charge for something or convert this into a one-day event like Cliff Ravenscraft has done, or the one-day business whatever that Pat Flynn and Chris Ducker do. How can we transition from this casual free meetup to, hey, I'm going to charge a couple $100 and we're going to maybe make some money off of this. Do you have any experience in that area too?
Absolutely. And look, there's nothing to be clear, because I know sometimes people, you start talking about making money, people are like, oh, now all of a sudden you're selling out. Look, we're in business, right? This is also business too, but it is about turning the relationships into revenue. And there are a lot
about the money thing, Lou, and I know you're going to agree with this. When I started my paid mastermind, and it's charged, it's a chunk of money every month, people thanked me for having them in my group. They thanked me for handing me money, and just the value that we can provide, sharing our expertise, bringing like-minded people together. That was one of the weirdest things. Thank you for having me in your group. Here's $50 a month or whatever.
Yeah, I do it as well. And at first I was like, wow, this is strange, because I've been in mastermind groups before, but you are bringing value, right? It's not a paid friendship. You're bringing value to those meetings and those get-togethers. And I understand the value and the investment that people need to make. And I understand why they would thank you, because of what they get from the masterminds.
Yeah, and the more, just by charging, you can only add more value. For example, if you had a 40-hour a week job and you took 3 hours out on a Saturday and provided massive value, you could only do that 4 times a month. But if you charged for it and you could do it every day of the week, that's 30 times as much value as just every Saturday or something like that. So that's my side note. How can we turn this and convert this free connection into something that helps us pay the bills?
So there's a number of different ways, like I said, to turn the relationships into revenue. You've done a number of free events. Now you can do paid events. So just to use myself, for example, the common thread is Disney. So I've done things where I've rented out an entire attraction, like the Great Movie Ride or the American Adventure, and had like a private dinner there. 2 weeks ago, I rented out the Tower of Terror at Hollywood Studios.
Oh, wow.
And we had a private dinner and tour up on the balcony for a very small. It's not anything that you can go to Disney and buy. You have to really sort of plan it specially. So people love the idea that they're able to do something with this community that they belong to, that is something special and something memorable that other people can't do. And obviously we give them things that they walk away from as well. So you can start having different types of paid events where there is a value add, right? And the value add is either, again, if you're running like a workshop or a mastermind, or you're having a speaker there, there's value in that. Even if you're doing like a group picnic or a group sporting event or whatever it might be, there's ways to start charging for that. And not only can you charge the people who are there, who are willing to pay it because A, they want to help you, they want to be part of it, right? And if there are tickets available, there is this sense that there is obviously clearly there's a value there, but there's also ways to have sponsors for it too. So for example, for my cruise, I have a travel company that specializes in Disney travel. They are a premier sponsor and they sponsor that event. They get some co-branding and some logo. And there's obviously that, there's a financial exchange that takes place that allows you to monetize it that way as well. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do it in terms of monetizing the audience and then monetizing it through sponsorships.
What do you think is the easiest or quickest one for someone who's never done that before?
I think, starting to move to ticketed events, and look, start small, right? Even if you do a meetup and charge people $5 or $10, right? An event, I'm a huge fan of Eventbrite. If you charge people $5 or $10, a sort of a minimal amount, you'll make a couple of bucks. Look, if you have 50 people show up, that's $250 you didn't have before, right? And they just want to be part of that. Like, oh, I got a ticket to Ellery's meetup. Like, that's really cool. I'm going to get to go to this thing, and it only cost me $5. But as you start to bring more value in terms of what it is or where it is or the type of experience that you give to them, or things that you can give them as part of it, a takeaway, I think monetizing the audience first, and I sort of hate to sort of put it that way, but selling tickets to your event is probably easier than going out and trying to find a sponsor and then figuring out what to charge them and then what's the value that you're going to bring the sponsor and vice versa.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I put up some sponsorship things on my Eventbrite, and I just knowing that if they're not there, nobody could buy it anyway.
Right.
So just throwing it out. I didn't plan on selling any sponsorships, but
And and look,
that's
I'm sorry to interrupt. The sponsors really need to be organic to what you're doing too. So if I do a Disney event and, Drobo wants to come in and sponsor, it doesn't make sense. I don't know why I picked Drobo out of like left field, but if a technology company or a, something that was unrelated to it, it really has to, the sponsor should, in a perfect world, make sense and be very organic. And certainly I heavily vet any potential sponsors because they are ultimately a reflection on you.
Yeah.
So
they're definitely
I'm always
tied.
very careful.
And Lou, I could drill you with questions for all day, and I want to be respectful of your time. Like I told you at the very beginning, I chatted with Keith Griffiths yesterday, and we could have chatted for 3 hours, and we still wouldn't have gotten to everything that I wanted to ask him. So thank you for your time. A couple final questions for you. What does the word empower mean to you?
Oh, man, like word association. Let me. I think that.
That was a complete 180. I apologize.
No,
I just threw that at you.
I think, we are empowered. We are empowered. We have the ability, and I think it starts with a belief and a set of faith in yourself and your dream and whatever it is that you want to do. It is very empowering, and I think that we are all empowered, and we do have, like I said, the tools and opportunity now to be able to take that dream, whatever it might be, and turn it into a reality.
Awesome. What was the last movie you saw? And if you say Frozen, you would be among the billions of people.
The last movie, God, I don't get out to the movies very much. Oh my God, it was probably something I watched like on Netflix or on TV. I think the last movie I actually went to was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, what'd you think?
I saw it 3 times.
we saw it twice. I felt like that was a wonderful combination of sci-fi and superhero.
Yeah, I'm a big nerd, man. So I'm a sci-fi. I'm a Disney geek. I'm a Marvel geek. So that had it all sort of wrapped up nice and tight for me.
Exactly. Well, we are Groot, so
I love it.
Well, Lou, what is if someone maybe tell the Lou of 10 years ago, or I guess maybe it'd have to be about 12 years ago or so. What is one tip or piece of advice that you could give yourself from 12 years ago before you started all of this and it was just an idea? What would you tell? Or what would you tell yourself?
That it's okay to be scared. And it's okay to constantly be scared because, like I said, we are steering the ship and there is no roadmap. There is no game plan. And for me, I've learned to use the fear as a motivator. When you're afraid about taking a leap of faith or you're afraid about where the cash flow is going to come in, it's okay because you're not alone. We all as entrepreneurs go through that. I would also probably tell myself that you can do it all alone only for so much time. And at some point, if you want to grow and you want to scale, you're going to need help. And I would understand the importance of trust and team and building a team around you. Like
VAs, or are you talking like a support network of friends and stuff, or what do you mean?
Both. So VAs, yeah, and I've started to recently use VAs, but in terms of getting help, whether it's on your blog or your podcast or videos or your business, I say look to your community first, because when I did start to need help and I just sort of put the word out there on my show or on my newscast, that's where I found my newsletter editor, my blog manager, my web developers, my video editors, all the people who are part of my closest circle now came from the tribe. They came right from the community.
And if they've been following you, they already they already know, like, and trust you, which is good for business, but they also are more likely to think like you and, not want to take what you're doing and change it. Right. So much that it's not recognizable, and they want to help anymore. So
they inherently want to help you. Like I'm sure you get emails that say thank you for what you do. Like when they say that, they want to be a part of it sometimes any way they can. They want to lend their time and their talents, and they want to help you continue to do what you do because they like it and they appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Lou, thank you again for spending an hour with me and the listener today. It's been a pleasure. It's like the tip of the iceberg, and the more I learn, the more I realize I need to learn even more. So thank you again for sharing all of your information and your success stories. Good luck with Walt. I guess we can't say Walt Disney World Radio because that's what they own. We can say WDW Radio. What do you say there?
It's WDW Radio.
Excellent. Well, from the South, it's like WDW. So it's a little bit harder for me to say. But WDW Radio. Lou, if someone wanted to thank you for sharing all of this knowledge with us today, where can we send them?
They can go to www.radio.com. LouMongello.com is sort of my home-based website. And if you want to follow me over on the Twitter, I am at Lou Mongello.
Awesome. Well, I'll put all of the links to those in the show notes over at empoweredpodcast.com, and you can find Lou's episode there. Thank you, Lou, for hanging out, and good luck with everything.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it, and best of luck on the meetup. I think you're going to be very pleasantly surprised, and I hope that this is the first of many for you.
Man, I hope you had as much fun listening to me and Lou as I had actually talking to Lou. Yeah, he's such a fun guy, such a nice guy, and I'm really excited to hear him be one of the keynote speakers at Podcast Move. And if you want to grab your tickets, there's a link for that at empoweredpodcast.com/69. If you want to get Lou's tips for how to create a successful meetup group, again, the link for that is also empoweredpodcast.69. Just put your email in there, and I will send you that PDF as a checklist so that when you are creating your live events to increase your authority, to build relationships, and take this online experience and bring it offline, you can print that off and know exactly what to do. So head over to empoweredpodcast.com. Wait. You guessed it, /69. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Ellery Wells. It's been a pleasure spending the last 60 minutes with you. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you next week when we talk to Keith Griffiths, who is from the Boston area, has started an online business, and has created one of the most successful meetup groups that I've ever seen, with over 1,000 people who come and hang out with him and meet one another. So stay tuned next week for episode 70 when we chat with Keith Griffiths. Again, I'm your host, Ellery Wells, and we'll see you then.